All right, let's dive into this Stoicism thing, huh? We've got Mark Tuitert's The Stoic Mindset all queued up.
Yeah, the Olympian speed skater turned entrepreneur. I'm curious to see what he's got to say about all this.
Me too. Especially how this whole ancient philosophy thing applies today, you know? Like, I'm not hitting the ice for any gold medals anytime soon.
Well, and that's what's so interesting about Tuitert's take on it. It's not just theory with him. He actually, lives it.
Yeah, I read that he credits Stoicism for helping him through some tough times.
Big time. Like missing the 2002 Olympics, he pushed himself way too hard, overtrained, and completely wrecked his body.
Ugh, that's gotta be brutal for any athlete, let alone someone at his level.
Totally.
Right.
Devastating setback. But he talks about how that experience forced him to confront this anti-fragility concept.
Anti-fragility. Okay, that's a new one. What's that all about?
So it comes from Nassim Taleb's work. And basically it suggests that it's not about avoiding setbacks altogether, but about using them to become stronger. You know, think of it like building muscle, right? You push, you tear things down, but then you rebuild stronger.
Interesting. So instead of letting that missed Olympics crush him, he used it as a chance to learn and grow.
Exactly. That's when he really dove into training theory, and that led him to, of all things, philosophy and Stoicism.
Wow, that's quite a journey. But how do you actually go from reading about Stoicism to applying it, especially in such a tough situation?
Well, it starts with this idea of control, or more specifically, focusing on what you can control. Tuitert couldn't change the fact that he missed the Olympics, but he could change how he approached his training, his mindset moving forward.
Okay, so it's about shifting that perspective, right? Not getting stuck in the why me cycle, but focusing on what you can actually do.
Right, and this is where the Stoic approach to emotions comes in. It's not about suppressing your feelings, it's about understanding where they come from.
So it's okay to feel angry, frustrated, disappointed.
Yeah.
You're not just supposed to ignore it all.
Exactly. The Stoics recognized that emotions are a natural part of being human. What they focused on was understanding the root of those emotions, and they believed that emotions stem from our judgments about events.
Interesting. So it's not the event itself that's causing the emotional chaos, but our interpretation of it.
Right, and Tuitert uses a really personal example to illustrate this. His relationship with his father. After his parents divorced, he harbored a lot of anger towards him. He judged his dad's actions, his choices.
Man, that's a tough situation all around. I can see how emotions would run high. But how does he go from anger to, well, I guess acceptance or understanding?
By questioning those judgments he was holding on to, over time, Tuitert realized that a lot of his anger was rooted in his own expectations of what a father should be.
It's like he was holding on to this narrative in his head, and once he examined it, he could see things more clearly.
Yeah. It's not about condoning his father's actions, but rather about recognizing that holding on to that anger was only hurting him. That realization eventually allowed him to reconcile with his dad.
Wow, that's really powerful. It makes me think about those times I've clung to being upset over things I can't control.
Yeah.
It's a pretty common human experience, right?
Absolutely, and that's what Tuitert keeps coming back to. He's not just talking about Stoicism as this abstract idea, he's giving real examples of how it's played out in his own life, and this whole control thing, it's essential when you look at high-pressure situations.
Yeah, like competing at the Olympics. No pressure there, right?
Talk about intense. Tuitert talks about the 2010 Vancouver Olympics and how he used a Stoic technique called shrinking the circle.
Shrinking the circle. Okay, I'm intrigued. How's that work?
So instead of letting the enormity of everything overwhelm him, all the pressure, the expectations, he narrowed his focus down to the very next thing he could control, those first few strides on the ice.
Interesting. So it's about breaking it down into manageable pieces, focusing on the process, not the overwhelming big picture.
Exactly. He uses this analogy of a Stoic archer. The archer can control the quality of the arrow, their stance, aim, all of that. But once that arrow is released, zero control over where it lands.
I like that. You can prepare like crazy, but ultimately some things are just out of your hands.
Yeah.
Which I guess is where acceptance comes in.
You got it. Tuitert's big on this idea of amor fati, learning to love your fate. And again, he doesn't just talk about it abstractly. He tells this story about getting slammed with the flu right before a major competition.
Oh man, talk about bad timing. Every athlete's nightmare, right?
The worst. But instead of freaking out, he used that forced downtime to rest, recharge, even picked up a guitar.
He did? I didn't know he played guitar.
Yeah, something he'd always wanted to do but never had time for. He turned what most people would consider a disaster into an opportunity.
That's pretty impressive. Finding the good in a bad situation, even when it's tough. Makes you wonder how we could all apply that a bit more, huh?
Totally. But there's another side to Stoicism that people often miss, this whole community aspect.
Really, I always thought of it as very individualistic philosophy. Mastering your own mind, your own emotions.
Yeah, it's a common misconception. The Stoics, they knew we're all connected. Our well-being is tied to the well-being of those around us.
So it's not just about individual resilience, but about supporting each other, lifting each other up.
Exactly. Tuitert even uses this Dutch word "noaberschap" to describe it, which is all about this deep sense of neighborliness, mutual support within a community.
I love that. It really is that it takes a village mentality, right?
Totally. And it played out in Tuitert's speed skating career. Individual drive was important, but he emphasizes how the team's energy, their support, it amplified everyone's performance.
Makes sense. You're not just competing for yourself, you're part of something larger.
Exactly. They trained together, pushed each other, even blocked the win for one another. It wasn't just about individual goals, but this shared pursuit of excellence.
Powerful stuff. It reminds me of that saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Perfect example. And it's something we can all cultivate in our own lives, whether it's supporting a colleague, lending a hand to a neighbor. Those acts of connection matter.
It's true. We've covered so much ground, from setbacks to emotions, control, community. I have a feeling Tuitert doesn't shy away from the big questions, though.
You're right about that. In fact, he tackles a topic many people try to avoid: death.
Wow, okay. Didn't see that coming, but I guess it makes sense. You can't talk about living a good life without acknowledging that it's finite.
Yeah, it's kind of unavoidable, right? But he doesn't frame it in a scary way like doom and gloom, everybody dies. More like using that awareness to reflect, what's really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's easy to say, think about death. Harder to actually do that without spiraling.
He talks about how his mom passing away got him thinking about it, and then reading Bronnie Ware's Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, that really hit home.
Oh, yeah, that book's intense. Isn't the number one regret, like, not living authentically?
Spot on. Not having the guts to be themselves, do what they really wanted. Makes you think,
Big time. Makes you want to take stock, make sure you're not sleepwalking through life. But it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Big questions, daily grind.
Totally. And that's where this whole eudaimonia thing comes in. It's a big part of what Tuitert talks about.
Eudaimonia. Okay, gotta admit, not a word I use every day.
Basically, it's about flourishing, living a virtuous life. Not just chasing fleeting happiness, but something deeper, more meaningful.
So it's not about those temporary highs and lows, but finding fulfillment in the journey itself.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with your values, striving for excellence, finding joy in the process of reaching your goals, not just the end result. And he uses this funny example, right? He wins Olympic gold, pinnacle of his career.
Yeah, you'd think that's the ultimate happiness ticket.
Right. But he talks about how that high faded, life went on. He even jokes about how his big sponsorship deal ended up being for Kinder Bueno, not Nike like he'd always pictured.
That's hilarious and kind of humbling. Even achieving something incredible doesn't magically make you happy forever.
Exactly. It's more about how you live your life, day in and day out. So how do you cultivate that eudaimonia? Well, Tuitert, after retiring from speed skating, he felt lost, didn't know what to do next.
I can relate to that. Those big transitions can be tough. What did he do?
His brother gave him some great advice. Figure out what really gets you going. What are you interested in? So Tuitert made this life direction triangle. 3 points: music, games, technology.
Cool concept. So he used his passions to guide his next steps.
Exactly. And it's something he emphasizes throughout the book. Stoicism isn't just about thinking, it's about doing.
Love that. Action over endless pondering. So if someone's listening wants to try the Stoicism thing out, what's a good first step?
Tuiter's big on asking yourself, what have I been putting off that lines up with what I care about? Could be small. Calling a friend, starting that project, anything.
Those little actions can make a huge difference. It's about recognizing we have the power to shape our lives, even when things are tough.
100%. And that's the cool thing about Stoicism, right? It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up, trying your best, day after day.
This has been great. Thank you so much for diving into the Stoic mindset with us. Really makes you think about how these ancient ideas still hold up today.
Totally agree. It's been a pleasure talking about this with you.
And for everyone listening, we hope you found this deep dive insightful. Remember, you might not be able to control everything that happens, but you can control how you respond, and that's a powerful thing.